boys and girls, it's Mrs. Bolton back to share the second reading for Stellaluna. I love the story by Janelle Cannon. She is the author. That means she wrote the words. In the first read of Stellaluna, I introduced some facts about bats and the fact that Stellaluna and her mom are fruit bats. I shared a little information about those with you. So before I get started with today's lesson, I want to share some more information just to carry on with that I shared with you at the beginning of the first Dialogic Read. But one of the things that I focused on was the fact that bats are a group called Chiroptera. Chiroptera, meaning hand wing, because they do have those elongated fingers that allow that skin stretched across them to be a wing so they can fly. They are the only flying mammal. So I want to share this diagram with you. This is a great way to see how bats' arm and hand structure is similar to ours, but it also shows the difference between the bat arm and hand structure and a bird's. So let's start with that word chiroptera that we learned. And I want to thank an area environmental biologist for that. Mr. Joel Pounders shared that pronunciation with me. If I ever have any questions, I always go to Mr. Pounders, and he is just a wonderful resource for all things science and nature. So chiroptera means hand wing. So when we look at our arms, we see this upper arm, the forearm, and we see the 5 digits we call fingers. Well, down here on the bat, we also see this little upper arm, the forearm, and the elongated fingers, those digits, and this little one sticking up we call the thumb. So that part of the structure is very similar to ours. They just have elongated fingers. But if we take a look at the bird does have like an arm structure that comes out, and we even see that little hook there that could act as a thumb, but that's where it ends. They do not have these elongated finger structures that create a shape for their wing. All this does is create a structure that the skin can stretch over, and then of course birds have feathers growing from their wings, whereas the mammals have this skin, thick skin that stretches over, and bats of course have mammal characteristics because that's what they are. We know mammals are covered with hair or fur. So I thought that was a great diagram to show some of those similarities and differences. I'm going to share this one with you also. Another great little diagram to show those arm and finger structures. We see the little claws they hang from. We know they prefer to hang upside down. Just a great little diagram to show those parts of the bat. So, I wanted to share that with you before I got started with our reading today and our vocabularies. Super interesting, super interesting. And remember that with the fruit bats, we learned that they do not use the echolocation where the sound waves bounce off objects and come back to the bat to tell it where that object or that small animal is located. Fruit bats have keen, that means sharp or very good, senses of vision and smell. And that helps them to locate that fragrant, sweet-smelling fruit that they love to eat. So before I read Stellaluna for the second time, and please remember, boys and girls, listen all the way through because the vocabulary that you're focused on, and the types of questions I'm going to ask are a little different. They require a little deeper thinking. So that's important. That teaches us how to think about stories as we read. So the first special word I want to share with you today is startling. Startling. And that comes from the word startle, which means to scare. So startling means scaring. Scaring. If you are startled, or if you're startling someone, you are scaring them. Whether you're hiding and you're jumping out, or you're at a haunted house and someone jumps out and startles you. Maybe your parents or grandparents have been driving and another car pulled out in front of you and that scared you. We would say that startled you. It was startling to you. So I'm going to add startling to our vocabulary chart. We're going to listen for how that word is used in our story and how that brings meaning to the story. Our next word is clambered. 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 Now, again, we have a special spelling structure added to the end of this word called a suffix. ed added to this word means that this has already happened. It's happened in the past. So instead of clamber, which means to climb or crawl, clambered means something or someone climbed or crawled in a way that was not easy. So clambered means that someone or something, in this case it's going to be Stellaluna, clambered into a nest, and that lets us know that this was not easy for her to do that. So another word to look and listen for. And the final word I want you to listen for the meaning of in the story today is the word anxious. Can you spell that with me? A-N-X-I-O-U-S. Anxious. Anxious. Let's spell that one more time. A-N-X-I-O-U-S. Anxious means worried about what could happen. Now, this is a definition that's specific for the story today, because sometimes you can be anxious about something and it just means that you are excited about something happening. But in the case of Stellaluna, the characters are going to be worried about what could happen, not what already has happened, but what could happen in the near future. So they are anxious about something happening. And we're going to listen for what that is in the story, Stellaluna by Janelle Cannon. In a warm and sultry forest far, far away. I love that far, far away, because usually when we hear words like far, far away and there once lived, that sets us up to know that this is a fictional story. It's just telling something to entertain us. So that's a good point to notice. I like that, those words used by the author in that very first sentence. I'm going to start over. In a warm and sultry forest far, far away, there once lived a mother fruit bat and her new baby. Oh, how Mother Bat loved her soft, tiny baby. I'll name you Stellaluna, she crooned. Each night, Mother Bat would carry Stellaluna clutched to her breast as she flew out to search for food. Now remember that the Luna in Stellaluna is Spanish for moon. And I think that was the author's way of reminding us that bats are nocturnal. They like to come out and feed at night. One night, as Mother Bat followed the heavy scent of ripe fruit, an owl spied her. On silent wings, the powerful bird swooped down upon the bats. Dodging and shrieking, Mother Bat tried to escape, but the owl struck again and again, knocking Stellaluna into the air. Her baby wings were as limp and useless as wet paper. Down, down she went, faster and faster, into the forest below. So why are Stellaluna's wings useless? Why are they like wet paper? She's just a baby. Her wings are not strong enough for her to fly on her own yet. That's why she has to hang on to her mom, and her mom carries her when she flies. The dark leafy tangle of branches caught Stellaluna as she fell. One twig was small enough for Stellaluna's tiny feet. Wrapping her wings around her, she clutched the thin branch, trembling with cold and fear. "Mother!" Stellaluna squeaked. "Where are you?" By daybreak, the baby bat could hold on no longer. Down, down, again she dropped. So there's poor Stellaluna. She's just a little baby bat. She's all alone. She can't find her mother. She doesn't know what's happened to her mother. And she hangs on as long as she can, and then she drops again deeper into the forest. Flump! Stellaluna landed head first into a soft, downy nest, startling the 3 baby birds who lived there. Stellaluna quickly clambered from the nest and hung out of sight below it. She listened to the babble of these birds. "What was that?" cried Flap. "I don't know, but it's hanging by its feet," chirped Flitter. "Shh, here comes Mama," hissed Pip. So we hear 2 of our special words on this page. We hear, first of all, we hear the word startling. So when Stellaluna fell into the nest, she startled the baby birds. And we know that that means she scared them. They weren't expecting something to fall from the sky. And we also hear the word clambered, because Stellaluna realized very quickly she was in a nest she did not belong in with strange animals, and she very quickly and awkwardly climbed out of the nest and went underneath and hung from underneath the nest. And I love this too. Look, Mother Bird found a piece of ribbon to weave into her nest. And birds do that. They'll pick up ribbon, yarn, any type of string, hair, fur, and they line their nest with that to keep their babies warm. Many, many times that day, Mama Bird flew away, always returning with food for her babies. Stellaluna was terribly hungry, but not for the crawly things Mama Bird brought. Finally, though, the little bird could not bear it any longer. She climbed into the nest, closed her eyes, and opened her mouth. Plop! In dropped a big green grasshopper. Now, that grasshopper would have been a wonderful feast for a small bird, but not for a bat that ate what? That's right. Stellaluna was a fruit bat, and she liked things that were sweet and juicy, not bitter and yucky, which is what she thought of that grasshopper. But wasn't it nice that the mama bird was willing to feed her and keep her from starving to death, though? I mean, the mama bird could have pushed her out of the nest. Stellaluna learned to be like the birds. She stayed awake all day and slept at night. She ate bugs, even though they tasted awful. Her bat ways were quickly disappearing, except for one thing. Stellaluna still liked to sleep hanging by her feet. Once when Mama was away, the curious baby birds decided to try it too. When Mama Bird came home, she saw 8 tiny feet gripping the edge of the nest. "Eek!" she cried. "Get back here this instant! You're going to fall and break your necks!" So there is Mama Bird panicking, afraid her baby birds are going to fall to their deaths. Why would she be worried about those little birds? Sure, because they're not used to hanging by their feet. They're used to being in the nest, sitting upright. And if Stellaluna was little and her little wings weren't strong enough to fly, do you think the baby bird's wings would have been strong enough to fly? Probably not, right? The birds clambered back into the nest, but Mama Bird stopped Stellaluna. "You are teaching my children to do bad things. I will not let you back into this nest unless you promise to obey the rules of this house." Stellaluna promised. She ate bugs without making faces. She slept in the nest at night, and she did not hang by her feet anymore. Stellaluna behaved as a good bird should. But we know the problem with that, don't we, boys and girls? We know that Stellaluna is not a bird. But in Mother Bird's defense, that's the only thing she knows. And that's what she knows will keep her babies safe. So again, I mean, she's a pretty nice mama bird, don't you think? Because what could she have done? Exactly. She could have just pushed Stellaluna out of the nest again. But she didn't. All the babies grew quickly. Soon the nest became crowded. Mama Bird told them it was time to learn to fly. One by one, Pip, Flitter, Flap, and Stellaluna jumped from the nest. Their wings worked. "I'm just like them," thought Stellaluna. "I can fly too." So birds and bats can fly, but does that make them the same? Remember, bats are mammals, birds are birds. Pip, Flitter, and Flap landed gracefully on a branch. Stellaluna tried to do the same. Stellaluna's having a bit more trouble because she's not used to landing on top of a branch. She's used to what? Hanging underneath, exactly. How embarrassing. So here are some of Stellaluna's attempts at landing on a branch like a bird. "I will fly all day," Stellaluna told herself. "Then no one will see how clumsy I am." So she's thinking, you know what? If I don't land, then the others won't see how clumsy I am trying to land. The next day, Pip, Flitter, Flap, and Stellaluna went flying far from home. They flew for hours, exercising their new wings. "The sun is setting," warned Flitter. "We had better get home or we will get lost in the dark," said Flap. But Stellaluna had flown far ahead and was nowhere to be seen. The three anxious birds went home without her. So Stellaluna's far ahead because Stellaluna has decided she is not going to land anywhere for the others to see how clumsy she is trying to do that. So she has just kept going and the birds can't see her. Now it says that the birds were anxious. What were the birds anxious about? That's right. It was getting dark, and they do not see well in the dark like Stellaluna. So they were worried, they were anxious that if they didn't get home right away, they would get lost in the dark. All alone, Stellaluna flew and flew until her wings ached and she dropped into a tree. "I promised not to hang by my feet," Stellaluna sighed. So she hung by her thumbs and soon fell asleep. She didn't hear the soft sound of wings coming near. What are those things coming near? Other bats, right? "Hey," a loud voice said, "why are you hanging upside down?" Stellaluna's eyes opened wide. She saw a most peculiar face. "I am not upside down. You are," Stellaluna said. "Ah, but you're a bat. Bats hang by their feet. You are hanging by your thumbs, so that makes you upside down," the creature said. "I am a bat. I am hanging by my feet. That makes me right side up." Stellaluna was confused. "But Mama Bird told me I was upside down. She said I was wrong." "Wrong for a bird, maybe, but not for a bat." So another fruit bat has come along, and Stellaluna is getting to talk to someone who looks more like herself. Someone who likes to hang by their feet. Someone who sees well at night. This is another fruit bat. More bats gathered around to see the strange young bat who behaved like a bird. Stellaluna told them her whole story. "You ate bugs?" stuttered one. "You slept at night?" gasped another. "How very strange," they all murmured. "Wait, wait, let me look at this child." A bat pushed through the crowd. "Did you say an owl attacked you?" Sniffing Stellaluna's fur, she whispered, "You are Stellaluna! You are my baby!" So we know parent animals learn the way their children, their little ones, look. But what's another way Stellaluna's mother knew that this was her baby? She smelled her. She had a very distinct smell that mother remembered. "You escaped the owl," cried Stellaluna. "You survived." "Yes," said Mother Bat as she wrapped her wings around Stellaluna. "Come with me. I'll show you where to find the most delicious fruit. You'll never have to eat another bug as long as you live." I love this picture because look how happy they are to find each other again. Love that picture. And did you see how much Stellaluna had grown since she got separated from her mother? Wow, she's almost as big as her mom. But it's nighttime, Stellaluna squeaked. We can't fly in the dark. We might crash into the trees. We're bats, said Mother Bat. We can see in darkness. Come with us. Stellaluna was afraid, but she let go of the tree and dropped into the deep blue sky. Stellaluna could see. She felt as though rays of light shone from her eyes. She was able to see everything in her path. Now, of course, we know she doesn't have rays coming from her eyes like Superman, but they put that on there for us to know that bats, fruit bats, do see very, very well at night. They need just the slightest, tiniest bit of light. Soon the bats found a mango tree, and Stellaluna ate as much of the fruit as she could hold. I'll never eat another bug as long as I live, cheered Stellaluna as she stuffed herself full. I must tell Pip, Flitter, and Flap. So we know Stellaluna had a bond with her bird brothers and sisters because she's found this wonderful, delicious fruit. And who does she want to share it with? Her bird brothers and sisters. So that tells us a lot about Stellaluna's character, doesn't it? That she's very caring and thoughtful. The next day, Stellaluna went to visit the birds. Come with me, meet my bat family, said Stellaluna. Okay, let's go, said Pip. They hang by their feet, and they fly at night, and they eat the best food in the whole world, Stellaluna explained. As the birds flew among the bats, Flap said, I feel upside down here. So the birds hung by their feet. Wait until dark, Stellaluna said excitedly. We fly at night. So can you pick out the three little birds? Here's one, here's two, here's the third, and there are the bats hanging beside them. When night came, Stellaluna flew away. Pip, Flitter, and Flap leapt from the tree to follow her. I can't see a thing, yelled Pip. Neither can I, howled Flitter. Ah! Shrieked Flap. They're going to crash, gasped Stellaluna. I must rescue them. Stellaluna swooped down, grabbing her friends in the air. She lifted them to a tree, and the birds grasped on to a branch. Stellaluna hung from the limb above. So it's not that the birds' wings aren't strong enough now. It's that they can't see in the dark. That's why they sleep at night, and they fly and hunt food during the daytime. That's a great picture of Stellaluna's wings and wing structure. Wow, she's a strong little bat to be able to lift those birds, isn't she? We're safe, said Stellaluna. Then she sighed. I wish you could see in the dark too. We wish you could land on your feet, Flitter replied. Pip and Flap nodded. They perched in silence for a long time. How can we be so different and feel so much alike? Mused Flitter. How can we feel so different and be so much alike? Wondered Pip. I think this is quite a mystery, Flap chirped. I agree, said Stellaluna. But we're friends, and that's a fact. So what they're telling each other is, you know what? We don't have to be the same to be friends and to care about each other. And it was very obvious that Stellaluna and the little birds loved each other as brothers and sisters, even though they weren't even from the same species. One was a mammal and the other was a bird. But being caring and considerate and kind and loving is something that we can be to all people. And that's a very powerful story we can learn from the story Stellaluna. So, did you hear our special words in that story? Did you hear the word startling? Stellaluna fell into the little bird's nest, startling them. That means she scared them because they weren't expecting something to drop into their nest from above. Did you hear how the word clambered was used? This word was actually in the story 2 times. So when Stellaluna first fell into the little bird's nest, she clambered out of the nest quickly and hung underneath because she realized she was in a nest with strangers. We heard it again when Mother Bird arrived back to the nest to find that Stellaluna and her babies were hanging upside down outside of the nest, and she shrieked at them and said, "Get back in here in this nest before you fall and break your necks." And the baby birds clambered back into the nest. That means they did it in a way that wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for them because they weren't used to hanging upside down. And what about the word anxious? Did you hear how the word anxious was used in the story? So when the little birds went out at night with Stellaluna, it started to get dark and they got very anxious. They were worried about what could happen, and what they were worried about could happen was what? What were they afraid of? That's right. They were afraid they would get lost going home if they waited until it was completely dark. All right, boys and girls, to end our lesson today, I want to talk to you about how we can change our voices to create different types of sentences. Now, throughout that story, there were times that I changed my voice to sound like characters, and not only to sound like the characters, but to sound like the characters would sound in certain instances. For instance, when Mother Bird returned to the nest and she saw her babies all lined up, hanging out upside down outside of the nest, she said, "Eek!" So I changed my voice. If you could see that in print, well, you did see that in print, there was an exclamation mark after that, "Eek!" to show that she said it with a lot of emotion. She had a lot of fear in her voice because she was scared. She was startled, wasn't she, to see that? So I'm going to take you through a little grammar activity where I'm going to say some sentences from our story. The words are going to stay the same. The only thing I'm going to change for each time I say the same sentence over and over is how I say it. And just changing how I say the sentence will change the type of sentence it is. So listen to these examples. Now, while you're at home and you're listening, I want you to do this as I read. If I say a sentence that's just telling something, like the sky is blue, or I'm saying a sentence that tells someone to do something like clean your room, those types of sentences end with periods. So I want you to take your finger and just boop, make a period in the air. Good. If I say a sentence like, eek, get back in this nest before you break your neck, where there's a lot of emotion, whether it's fear or happiness, then I want you to make an exclamation mark in the air. So that's a line down with a point at the bottom to show lots of emotion. And if I ask a question like, what time is it? I want you to make a question mark in the air. So around and down with a little dot at the bottom. So listen to this sentence. I am hanging by my feet. Now, did you hear my voice? My voice didn't change. I just told you, that was a telling sentence, I am hanging by my feet. So what would that sentence end with? Good, just a period. But what if I do change my voice when I say that sentence and it sounds like this? I am hanging by my feet? Now I'm asking, am I hanging by my feet? Now I've turned it into a question just by changing how I say it. Listen to this one. I am hanging by my feet! Exclamation mark. Because I said that with a lot of emotion, a lot of excitement. But I didn't ask you if I was. And I was doing more than just telling you I was showing how excited I was to do that. So the same sentence, just read differently, can become different types of sentences. Listen to this sentence. You ate bugs? Can you draw the punctuation mark in the air that that sentence would end with? You ate bugs? Good. That was a question. Let me draw those on the board. I'm going to draw a period, which looks like just a dot, a question mark, and an exclamation mark. Some people call that an exclamation point. So when I say, you ate bugs? That's like the little bat asked Stellaluna in the story. That was a question, because you could either say, yes, I did, or no, I did not. Listen to this one. You ate bugs. Did my voice change? I just told you. I just said it. You ate bugs. That would end with a period. Just a dot. But what if I say it this way? You ate bugs. Like, I can't believe it. But there's a lot of emotion there. That would be an exclamation mark, because you're showing a lot of emotion when you say that. Your voice is changing, but you're not asking a question. Listen to these. It is hanging by its feet. What did you draw in the air? Hopefully you drew a period, because that's just a telling sentence. It is hanging by its feet. But listen to it this way. It is hanging by its feet. I changed my voice, but not in a way to ask a question. I was just showing a lot of emotion. Listen to it this way. It is hanging by its feet. Because now I'm saying it in such a way that I want you to either say, yes it is, or no it is not. If you can give me an answer, guess what? That means I asked you a question. Exactly. Let's try one more set. You make the symbol in the air this time, and then I'll point, and we'll see if you were correct. Their wings worked. What did you draw? Good. An exclamation mark, because I said that with a lot of emotion. Listen to it this way. Their wings worked. What did you draw in the air? Good. I was just telling you that their wings worked. Not a lot of excitement. I did not ask a question. And one more time. Their wings worked. What did you draw in the air that time? That was a question, wasn't it? Because the way I changed my voice lets you know that I want you to either say, yes, their wings worked, or no, their wings did not work. So just by changing how we say a sentence can change the type of sentence that it is, boys and girls. And that's why when we read stories, it's important to try to read those words like the character would say them, like Stellaluna would say them, or Stellaluna's mother, or the mother bird, whatever character in a book it may be, whether you're reading Cinderella or whatever, it really doesn't matter. But that adds interest to the story, but it also adds meaning to the story. And we know how to read those sentences by looking at the punctuation marks at the end, or whether it's a telling sentence or a command telling someone to do something, an asking sentence, which we call a question, which we can answer, or a sentence where there's lots of emotion, whether it's anger or fear or excitement, it really doesn't matter. And it just makes the stories more interesting to listen to also. But we do get more meaning when we read them with that expression. So boys and girls, that's the end of our story and the end of our lesson for today. I hope you've enjoyed it, and join me back next time for another story and some more lessons about vocabulary and how we use our language. Until then, this is Mrs. Bolton. I'll be seeing you.